Captain rambles on unnecessarily long about things, junk and stuff or something. Good day, brethren. The good captain here from CapnsKustomWorks, back with another episode of my Beery Views. We got something pretty interesting for you today on Beery Views, and it's going to be another Gaelic lesson. Today we have Craic from Moylan's. Now, if you've been watching the entire series and perhaps picked up a few words here and there, just like we saw recently that she is spelled S-I-D-H-E, well, in this case, Craic is spelled C-R-A-I-C. And there's a big difference between the sort of Craic you find in the Isles, which this is indicative of, and the sort of Craic you find here in the States, in America. Primarily that this Craic is good. This Craic is what you want. The interwebs will never possibly remix that badly for me. What Craic means in Gaelic, it means good conversation, a riotous good time. You know, if you're over in the Isles, if you're in Ireland, Scotland, you know, some parts of Britain, and folks are like, good Craic tonight, that means good. That means we're having a great time. That means come on down, things are awesome here, you're gonna love it. So that's what this means. Craic from Moylan's. This is a XXXX IPA. Now, like a lot of the stuff that Moylan's does, this is also a live ale, and I hope that I've kept it well enough because it's been fridged at hopefully the proper temperature to keep it healthy and conditioning in that bottle until I'm ready to swig it down, which I want to be now. It's also pretty stern right from them. This is, what is this? I had it in my head a second ago. What is it, 11? 10.4. 10.4 alcohol by volume on this. So it's up there a little bit. You know, I've had sterner, but you know, that's nearing the top of the range for what you find at your average retailer of fine beverages. Another thing that Moylan's loves to do, as do some other fine brewers, to consternate beer drinkers like myself, is wax their caps. So, hence the old school church key, as opposed to my beloved skeleton opener that some of you may have paid attention to. I'm going to do this, and I'm going to make an absolute mess because they didn't ribbon this for me, did they? Nope. So, you guys get to watch me struggle with the bottle cap because it's much more amusing to let you watch it than it is to be well prepared off camera before you good folks show up. So we're going to scrape away some of that wax there. Just cut it off so we can open it. There we are. Now we're down to the glass. There you be. I'm trying to open it with this end. Don't do that. I'm trying to remove that rich, delicious wax till you see the beautiful California Brewed logo of Moylan's. Dispose of that wax for later, for disposal. So unlike most things, I'm not going to use that wax later. Smells nice and fresh. That is what we want. Little note on live beers that are still bottle aging. If they smell funky, don't drink them. Pretty simple. That smells delicious though. Oh my, that looks nice. You know, with the more recent past few years resurgence of IPAs, especially here in America. There's just a vast variety of IPAs available now, like this. Quadruple Ale 4X IPA. That's nuts. That's absolutely nuts. Is that regular-ish? Not really. That's on the extreme end here. It talks a little bit about the beer. You guys know I like a lot of info on a bottle. They give some neat info about their brewery and where they are, and, you know, California brewed and they won this stuff and whatever. That's cool. I like breweries that are inviting, like to get involved with their patrons, and that's great. A little bit of a description of the beer, but I would be happier with more of a description of the beer. I mean, it says, you know, satiates and satisfies the appetite of the hardcore hop lover. That's just one short excerpt of the paragraph that's on there. And it says New World hops, which, you know, that tells me that's some sort of a blend of American hops. I would like to know more. If you're touting the hops of a brew, talk about which kind you're using a little bit, because that's the sort of thing that's interesting to me and to a lot of other beer lovers out there. But it's not necessarily a mark against them. Like a lot of things about beer, that's just my taste. I always strive to know more. Some breweries are good about that, some aren't. So being California, they have to take up a lot of label for warnings and whatnot, because their regulations are a tad stringent out there. But that smells delicious. Let's start downing it some, shall we? That is hoppy. There's a lot more. I was gonna say bite. I don't know if I want to say bite now, because the maybe bite's the wrong word, but the sharpness, the acidity, the acidic note rather that comes out of that hops is pretty prominent. More so to the mouth than it is by the smell of it here. Yeah, it smells a lot milder than it tastes. Not an overwhelming taste. Nice and hoppy, but it's got an interesting quality. The taste fades a tad. The aftertaste is interesting. Beery. It's not bad. I guess my take is that this is perhaps a lot more traditional tasting than I would have imagined. Given the label, you know, if you've got quadruple anything to an IPA, I would expect more of a kick in the mouth than this delivered, which, again, this doesn't make it a bad beer. It's not bad at all. That's quite tasty. Thought there might be a bit more of that hop punch to it. You know, I've had some double IPAs that are like, wow, this is stuck in my mouth now. So for this to say it's a quadruple IPA, it's not as hoppy as maybe that's not the right word. It's very hoppy, but the hoppiness doesn't do exactly what I thought it was going to do. If anything, I thought the hoppiness might be completely overpowering. It's really not, which is fine. There's a perfectly decent balance there. Still getting some good grain notes out of it, which is good for me. I like that. I love hops, but I love to taste the grain of the beer as well. not an overpronounced head, but still a fairly strong head on that. Solid, kind of foamy. Haven't got much of it down yet, but it doesn't look like there's a heck of a lot of very fine lacing there. Whoops. It's a little more solidy. Well, this is interesting. I like a beer that I can go into and it gives me some surprises. They're not bad surprises. I guess maybe I was preparing myself for a little more of a taste assault that this did not really give. A few swigs in, it's quite nice. And I don't mean to make it sound like I don't like this, in the least. I just was really bracing myself, and that wasn't necessary. This is a very approachable beer. I'll be darned. Well, all my rambling aside, we'll see how well I can really handle this beer. It's time for everybody's favorite segment here. It's the accelerated motion. Okay, brethren, let's bring that back to regular speed here. It's a very interesting beer. And I like interesting beers, for sure. Some of that hoppiness definitely came out a little more as I went along. I mean, it was hoppy at the start. It just wasn't quite how I envisioned it might have been. There was a little more of those sharper, more acidic notes as I went along. Especially being a live brew, there was a fair amount of sediment at the bottom. I think stirring that up a little definitely released a little more of the flavors in there. But still, overall, it was not like some IPAs that just absolutely smack you right in the mouth. This one wasn't that. There was a lot more subtlety to the flavor. This might be a weird way to describe it, but I would almost say that there were flavors that were still strong, yet also subtle. There was a lot of complexity to that flavor. Might have a lot to do with the fact that if, like the label said, if they've got a pretty wide mix on the hop bill there, then that could account for a lot of that. There just could be a lot of blending of flavors that if you're doing a single hop brew of any sort, whether it's an IPA or something, anything else, the simplicity in a recipe can accentuate those prominent flavors in that recipe, which can be good or bad depending on what you're trying to accomplish in your brew. I've had a few brews. In fact, one that springs to mind from Revolution, a good semi-local out of the Chicago area, which we're very nearby. Revolution does a brew. They have their Anti-Hero, and they have a lot, I don't know how many off the top of my head. They have several single hop variants off of that base recipe. I've had their Galaxy Hero. I've had was it Citra Hero? I think it might have been Citra Hero. I think I might have had one other, but that's the sort of thing that brings very attenuated taste right to the fore of the brew. You know, when you pick up Galaxy Hero, you know that Galaxy hops are going to be what you're trying to taste in this beer. When you've got a beer that's a wide blend, it can be good in terms of complexity, which can be excellent in a beer. I love complexity. It can be not quite as good in the sense that maybe they're all trying to compete for flavors. Again, this wasn't a bad beer in the least. I feel like maybe the hops were, however, competing for position flavor-wise just a touch. I would have preferred maybe to accentuate a little bit here and there. Another thing that I noticed you might have picked out during the accelerated motion segment, I was checking out some of that sediment, some of the yeast and whatever. The yeast has a good flavor. I'll say that right off the bat. Folks have varying opinions on how you should handle live beers in particular, and particularly sedimenty beers just in general. I'm not scared of sediment. It's definitely possible for a beer to be too sedimenty. Sometimes that builds on the beer, and you just want to kind of avoid the sediment. I had a good buddy of mine, who's a local home brewer. He gifted me with a massive case full, by which I mean like a crate, not a cases in 24. Dude gave me like an entire batch of beer for a Christmas present a little while back. And it was a strong oatmeal stout. And it was so sedimenty, but a lot of that was due to the fact that he had very finely pulverized that oatmeal, which gave wonderful flavor to the beer. But filtering was minimal, and which is fine. And during cellaring, I mean, a lot of that sediment just dropped right down. So you had to take your pick. You could pour off an entire bottle and try to leave as much of that sediment behind as possible, which is fine. You could swig it out of the bottle, and you're going to know that you're going to be drinking a beer that's, you know, going to have the consistency of like a malt or something, because there's so much oatmeal in it. It wasn't bad, but again, it depends on your taste. Some folks don't mind if there's a lot of solids in the body of that beer. Some folks prefer to leave the sediment behind as much as possible. Some folks go as far to say that, oh, you shouldn't drink too much of it because it's not good for you. Well, I probably wouldn't, you know, create a yeast starter and then eat it up with a spoon. That might not be real healthy. The amount of sediment in a bottle, generally, it's not going to be an issue, unless you're particularly sensitive to that sort of thing. But I did taste some of the yeasty sediments that came out of this. The yeast flavor to it was quite good, because we got to be honest, if we're beer connoisseurs, yeah, yeast does lend to the flavor of the beer. Absolutely no question. That's why there's many varieties of yeast. If there wasn't, if one yeast did it all the time and it was just fine, then folks wouldn't go out and seek out different varieties of yeast, but they do. Brewers say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. Some breweries carefully guard and propagate their own yeasts to, it's such an industry secret, because they're like, this is important to the beer. All I can say about this beer is the sediment I tasted out of the bottom, you know, just by itself, not in the pour. It was good. I could taste the yeast flavor, which some of that does indicate that yes, it was a live brew. You don't get as much of the actual yeast flavor in some of your pasteurized brews or something like that, which who knows why folks do that. But this yeast flavor was good. The hops flavor was good, not quite what I expected. Again, doesn't mean that it was bad, but I went into it expecting a much bolder hop flavor, and what I got instead was definitely more nuanced. Not bad, though. Just not what I would have expected from something that, you know, labels as a quadruple IPA. Grain flavor was okay as well, which is a little better than I expected, because a lot of those real bold IPAs, you lose a lot of the grain flavor. This one didn't do that. So the balance was much better than I would have expected. Again, especially from something that bills as a quadruple IPA. So overall, very interesting. Moylan's is an interesting brewery. I thoroughly suggest looking into them. If you ever buy a bottle of any of their stuff, it'll tell you right how to get there. Go down, take the brewery tour. I love brewery tours in general. I always say people should take them. No matter where they go, you find a brewery tour, check it out. You're bound to learn a little something. I'm going to drink the last bit of this beer, because this was good. I'd give this beer a good, solid rating. I was expecting a little bit of a kick in the teeth. Didn't happen. But overall, the beer was quite good. I don't know that I'd buy it by the 22 and drink it all the time, just for my taste. The characteristic of it, however, I think would do very well as, say, a sampler flight or something like that. If you're going to make some comparisons between beers, this was a very good representation of a very traditional sort of IPA. Again, with the quadruple IPA, I don't know. I think that's maybe just pushing the branding a little bit. But for an IPA that had a very traditional flavor to it, and especially a live brew, which not enough places are doing anymore, this was quite good. This was a very solid on this beer. So, alright. Thanks very much again for being with me. Thanks for tolerating my ramblings. Please feel free, share your comments. I really want to hear what you guys have to say about whether it be this beer, if you try this beer and have thoughts on it, if you have some suggestions for other beers that we should try on beer reviews, by all means, let me know in the comments below. Give a like to the video if you really actually enjoyed it, I guess. Some of you might have, so feel free to like it. Subscribe to my channel if you want to keep apprised of what I'm doing, because in addition to beer reviews, we also have the Liquid Considerations series, which is our e-liquid reviews and discussions. Also have a lot of other stuff, doing some art, playing some music, making some instruments, whatever strikes my fancy at the time. That's what I'm all about, because I'm a crazy person, so I'm just going to keep being crazy. Thanks so much, and as always, we're going to see you again in the real near future, whether you like it or not. Much love.
Why you wasting time watching ridiculous nonsense? We love you anyway, despite your poor judgment.
This Craic is good. This Craic is what you want. Remix that, interwebs.